beginning up in there, and then like it just went broader and broader, again, sort of one step at a time. You know, and the Germans had plenty of reason to be resentful and hateful because, I mean, think about what they went through. We can't even imagine it. First of all, there was World War I, and so there was many men, like Hitler himself, who served in the trenches. And there's one story about Hitler. He won a medal for heroism in World War I, and he was sitting around with a group of his buddies and went off to do something, God only knows what. And when he came back, they were all dead because a mine had, not a mine, I don't remember, some kind of shell had landed in the middle of them, killed them all. It's like, that changes you. You know, and then afterwards, there was all these brutalized men who'd come out of the trenches. I mean, you just can't imagine what it must have been like in the trenches, you know, especially if you were there for like a couple of years. You weren't the same person. Get out of there, you're unemployed, your country's in ruins. Then the hyperinflation hits, and every single person in Germany who ever saved any money at all is flat, bloody broke. And then there's a communist revolution brewing in Russia, and it's like, it's hell. And the Nazis came along and said, well, not only are we going to restore order and greatness, but we're going to bloody well tell you whose fault this is. It's like, and Hitler, I've studied him a lot trying to understand what happened, and Hitler was, Carl Jung called him the mouthpiece of the collective unconscious of the German people. So you imagine there's all this resentment and hatred brewing underneath the surface, and all this chaos is there, and the desire for order is like clamoring in everyone's minds. And Hitler comes along, and he's a very powerful emotional orator, and he's watching the crowd, and he listens. And when he says thing A, nothing happens. And when he says thing B, everybody roars. And so he takes note of that. And it's not even conscious exactly, right? Because he's being molded by the crowd. And so they roar. And so he think, so that's a reinforcement. That's a reward. And so then he goes down that line a little bit farther, and they roar some more, and then he tries something else, and it's silent.
It becomes like, what they want.
You bet. Exactly that, man. He acts out the dark desire of the mob. So he becomes the embodiment of the dark desire of the mob. And that's partly why he had the charisma. It's right, because there's this unconscious fantasy brewing in the back of everyone's minds. You see that to some degree now with Antifa, for example, and their proclivity towards violence. You know, and you ask, just exactly what's going on there? Well, Hitler came to embody the desire of the German people for order and revenge. And he embodied that fully. You know, and you could say, so what happened was a collaboration between him and the people. It wasn't Hitler turned everyone into Nazis. It's like, no, that's not how it worked.
I'm sure there was a lot of good people still left over who got just overrun by the mania too.
Well,
who were disgusted by it.
The other thing too is that, you know, people are not that brave. And everybody thinks, this is one of the things I teach in my Maps of Meaning class, you know, it's like, okay, you look at Nazi Germany in the 30s and you think, well, I'd be one of the heroes who rescued the Jews. It's like, statistically, that's very improbable.
Right.
And one of the things I've learned in the last year with all this strange political, what would you say, this strange situation that I've been in is how unlikely it is for people to speak up. They just won't. Even tenured professors who are tenured, they're protected. It's like the probability they'll pop their head up and say something that might make them identifiable is very, very low. So
it's scary, yeah. I guess you're right.
Well, it's
and at time, and you know, in Nazi Germany, the stakes were as high as it could get. They didn't tolerate.
That's right. That's exactly right. But
you,
even when the stakes are low, people won't speak up. Eh?
Do you? Well, let's do a 180 here. This is always something.